In 1928, a book arrived in Carl Jung's mail that seemed to have been written about him by people who died centuries before he was born, in a country he had never visited, in a language he could not read. It was not a biography, it was a manual, a set of instructions for doing something with the human mind that Western psychology did not have a word for. And Jung, the most careful, most skeptical, most relentlessly rational psychologist of his century, read it and felt the floor tilt. Because the book described in precise detail a private experience he had told almost no one about, something he had been doing every morning for 15 years, something he could not explain and could not stop. He had assumed he was inventing it. The book proved he was only remembering it. Whoever wrote it had mapped the exact interior territory Jung thought he had discovered alone. And they had done it without a single one of his instruments, his theories, or his words. The book was called The Secret of the Golden Flower. And what it asked him to do next is where the trouble started. I'm Andrew, and this is Daily Tao Wisdom, where we go back to the source. Not the quotes on Instagram, not the self-help repackaging, the actual stories, the actual figures, the actual wisdom, and what it means for your life right now. By the end of this video, you'll understand what that strange little book actually taught. A single instruction about where your attention goes and what happens to a human being when it flows the wrong way for a lifetime. And you will never look at the thing you do with your eyes and your mind for 16 hours a day the same way again. Because the book isn't really about Jung. Jung is just the man it happened to catch. Let's go back, first to a desk in Zurich, and then much further. The book that almost didn't survive. Start with the object itself, because the object has a stranger history than the man reading it. The package on Jung's desk came from a German named Richard Wilhelm. Wilhelm was a missionary who had gone to China in 1899 to convert people, and who, by his own quiet admission, converted no one because something happened to him instead. He fell in love with the tradition he had been sent to replace. He settled in Qingdao, a port city on the Yellow Sea. He learned the language until he dreamed in it. He sat with Chinese scholars the way a student sits with a master, not the way a colonizer sits with a subject. And one of those scholars, an old sage named Lao Nixuan, a man steeped in a dying lineage of learning, handed Wilhelm a text almost no one in the West had ever seen. Its Chinese title was Taiyi Jinhua Zongzhi. Wilhelm rendered it into German as Das Geheimnis der goldenen Blüte, the secret of the golden flower. Here is where it gets interesting, and here is where a lazy documentary would lie to you. The tradition says this text came from Liu Dongbin, a legendary figure of the Tang dynasty, the 8th century after Christ, one of the so-called 8 immortals. That would make the teaching more than 1,000 years old. But the manuscript Wilhelm actually held in his hands was much younger. The version that survived was written down in something close to its present form only in the 17th century, passed through a secret religious society that printed it, lost it, and printed it again. For a while, it nearly vanished entirely. So, which is it? Ancient or recent? The honest answer, and this matters because it's the whole point of the text, is that the question is slightly wrong. A teaching about turning attention inward is not the kind of thing that gets invented on a date. It gets rediscovered, lost, found, lost again, found again. The same interior fact arrived at by different people in different centuries who each thought they were first. Hold that thought. Because it's about to happen one more time in Zurich in 1928 to a man who was absolutely certain he was first. The problem the book was built to solve. To understand why this book landed on Jung like a verdict, you have to understand what it was actually for. It was not philosophy. The Chinese tradition it came from, inner alchemy, Neidan, was intensely practical. Its practitioners were not trying to understand the mind. They were trying to operate it. They spoke in the language of furnaces and elixirs and light, but they were describing something concrete, a change you could produce inside yourself, deliberately, through a specific discipline of attention. And the problem they were trying to solve is one you will recognize immediately, because you are living inside it right now. The problem is this: from the moment you wake up, your attention flows outward, toward the screen, toward the task, toward the person across the table, the argument in your head, the thing you want, the thing you fear, the 10,000 things that pull at you every waking second. Your awareness is a stream, and that stream runs all day, every day, away from you and into the world. The Taoist alchemists noticed something about that stream. They noticed that it never comes back, that a life is, in a sense, the slow spending of a finite thing, attention poured outward until there is nothing left to pour. And they asked a question no one around them was asking: what would happen if you turned it around? Everyone in that world assumed the light was meant to shine outward, that a mind exists to grasp the world. The authors of The Golden Flower were about to discover why that assumption was quietly costing everyone their lives. The central instruction of The Secret of the Golden Flower has a name. In Chinese, it's huiguang, usually translated as the circulation of the light, or more literally, turning the light around. Don't let the poetry hide how simple it is. The light is your attention, your awareness. The thing that is, at this exact moment, pointed at these words. The book's claim is that this light has a default direction, outward, always outward, spent on objects. And that this direction is not a law of nature. It is a habit, a groove worn so deep over a lifetime that you mistake it for the shape of consciousness itself. The practice is to reverse it, not to stop thinking, not to empty the mind in the cartoon sense that the modern wellness industry sells. To take the light that normally streams outward and let it turn back on its own source. To let awareness become aware of itself instead of always of something else. And the text makes an astonishing promise about what happens when you do this consistently. It says something crystallizes, that when the light stops leaking outward and begins to circulate, a kind of center forms, a wholeness that was always latent but could never gather itself while the attention was scattered across the world. That center is the golden flower. The flower is not something you build, it's what appears on its own when you stop spending the light that would otherwise have grown it. Here's the image the text uses, and it's worth slowing down for. When the light is allowed to circle back to its source, they said, the powers of heaven and earth begin to settle and crystallize. Something forms where before there was only leakage. You have felt the opposite of this. You know exactly what a day of pure leakage feels like. 16 hours of attention poured out into the feed, the inbox, the worry, the scroll, and at the end of it, a specific kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't touch. Not tired, depleted, spent in a way you can't quite name. The Golden Flower named it, 1,200 years before the phone. It called it the loss of the light, and it said the loss was not inevitable. That was the theory. Then the theory walked into the study of a man who had been living it without knowing its name. Now, and only now, Jung, you have to understand where he was when the package arrived. In our video, Carl Jung read the Tao Te Ching. It broke his theory of the mind. We traced the 16-year descent he called his confrontation with the unconscious. The years he heard voices in his study, saw visions in daylight, and privately wondered whether he was losing his mind. This is that same Jung, battered, 53 years old, just barely out the other side of something he had no map for. And there was one detail from those years that he had told almost no one. Every morning, before he did anything else, he drew a circle. Not the same circle. Intricate, symmetrical, mandala-like figures. Patterns that seemed to rise from a level of his mind his reasoning could not reach. He drew them compulsively. He did not decide their content. He watched them appear under his hand, and he could not have told you what they meant or why he needed them. He simply knew that on days he drew them, something in him was in order, and on days he didn't, something was not. He assumed this was private, idiosyncratic, a symptom maybe of his own particular strangeness. Then he opened the golden flower, and the book was about the circles. The text described the mandala not as art, not as decoration, but as the natural signature of exactly the process it prescribed. The image that spontaneously forms when the scattered self begins to gather toward its center. The visible shape of the light coming home. Jung had been drawing the golden flower every morning for 15 years. He had just never had the word for the flower. Sit with what that would feel like. You spend the most frightening decade of your life navigating an interior wilderness alone, convinced you are the first person ever to walk this exact ground. And then a book arrives, transmitted through a secret society and a dying scholar and a converted missionary, and it turns out the ground has a name, a map, and 1,000 years of footprints on it. His response, by his own account, was not triumph. It was closer to vertigo. Because here is the thing that unsettled him, and it's subtler than, wow, they got there first. What shook Jung was the implication. If a Chinese alchemist in the 17th century and a Tang mystic before him, and Jung in the 20th, three people with nothing in common, no shared language, no shared instruments, all arrived at the identical interior fact, then the fact was not a cultural invention. It was structural, built into the human mind the way the circulatory system is built into the body. Jung had thought he was doing psychology. The book suggested he had stumbled onto anatomy. Here's where the story turns, and where most retellings of this go soft. You would expect that a man who found ancient confirmation of his life's most private experience would evangelize it, would tell his patients, here, this is the method, do this, would hand out the golden flower like a prescription. Jung did the opposite. When he wrote his commentary on the text, published alongside Wilhelm's translation in 1929, he spent a remarkable amount of it warning people away from the very thing he was introducing. He told his Western readers, in effect, do not imitate this. Do not sit down and try to practice Chinese inner alchemy. Do not try to become a Taoist. Why would he do that? He'd just found the most accurate description of the psyche he'd ever encountered. And his first public act was to put a fence around it. His reasoning is one of the most important and least understood things he ever said, and it goes straight to the heart of what this channel is about. Jung's fear was this: A Westerner who reads about the circulation of the light and tries to perform it will almost always do the one thing that guarantees failure. They will turn it into a technique, a project, a thing to achieve, to get right, to master, to add to their pile of accomplishments. They will approach an act of profound surrender with the exact grasping, forcing, effortful mind that the act is designed to dissolve. And it won't work. Worse, Jung believed it could be genuinely dangerous. Because these methods evolved inside a whole civilization, a living tradition with teachers and safeguards and a cultural container built over centuries. Rip the method out of that container, hand it to a striving European ego with no guide, and you don't get enlightenment. You get a person forcing their way into the unconscious with no protection, which is precisely the terrifying thing Jung had barely survived himself. He had earned that warning the hard way. He wasn't being cautious about someone else's territory. He was being cautious about the exact ground that had nearly destroyed him. So the man who found the perfect map told his readers not to use it as a map. Sound familiar? This is the same tension we followed in Jung versus Watts. One had the map, the other had the method. The impossible gap between describing the water and being able to hand someone the swim. Jung had the description. He understood, better than almost anyone, that the description was not the thing. And he refused to pretend otherwise, even when pretending would have made him a guru. What he offered instead was stranger and more honest. Not, do this. Something closer to, this is real. This is in you. And the West has to find its own way to it. Because the way you reach it cannot be borrowed, performed, or forced. Which raises the obvious question. If you can't force it and you can't borrow it, how does the flower ever open at all? The golden flower answers this question, and its answer is the deepest thing in the book. The flower does not open because you make it open. It opens because you stop preventing it. The alchemists had a phrase for the wrong way to do this. They warned against both extremes, against forcing the mind with effort, and against letting it go slack into daydream and drift. The forcing kills the flower, the drifting starves it. What they prescribed was a third thing that Western languages barely have a word for: an alert, effortless, non-grasping attention. Present, but not clenched. Awake, but not working. This is the same principle Lao Tzu had set down centuries earlier in the Tao Te Ching, in a line that Jung underlined in his own thinking. In the pursuit of learning, something is gained every day. In the pursuit of the Tao, something is dropped every day. Don't glide past that. Everything you have ever been rewarded for, school, career, the entire architecture of a modern life, runs on the first half. Add, acquire, accumulate, get more knowledge, more skill, more optimization, more self. The golden flower runs on the second half. It says the wholeness you're chasing is not something you add. It's something that appears when you stop adding, when the light stops being spent outward and is simply allowed to return. You cannot achieve the flower. You can only stop trampling it. And here is the part that should genuinely unsettle you, the same way it unsettled Jung. Everything in you that wants to get good at this, the part reading these words right now, calculating, filing this away as a technique to try, wondering if you're understanding it correctly, that part is the trampling. The grasping mind cannot grasp its way to non-grasping. The harder you try to circulate the light, the more you're just spending it on the effort of trying. The Taoists knew this was the central trap, and they did not pretend it was easy. Chapter 70 of the Tao Te Ching, which Jung knew well. My words are easy to understand and easy to practice, yet no one can understand them, and no one can practice them. That's not humility, that's precision. The instruction is simple. The doing of it defeats almost everyone. Not because it's complicated, but because the tool we reach for to do it is the exact tool that breaks it. This is what made the golden flower more than a curiosity to Jung. It wasn't just that it described his mandalas. It was that it had already thought through the failure mode he would spend the rest of his career watching in his patients. Brilliant, insightful, self-aware people who understood themselves with surgical precision and could not move an inch. People who had turned even their own healing into one more thing to grasp. The book had a name for the disease of the striving mind, and it had noticed 12 centuries early that you cannot cure grasping by grasping harder. So let's be precise about what actually happened in that study, because it's the reason this text matters, and not just this man. Jung took the golden flower and did what a great psychologist does. He translated it into his own system. The circulation of the light became a symbol of the process he called individuation. The golden flower became an image of the self, the integrated wholeness at the center of the psyche. The mandala became evidence for the collective unconscious. He built a beautiful bridge of concepts, and the bridge was real, and it has helped people for 100 years. But Jung himself knew the bridge had a gap in it that no concept could close, because the text was not, finally, a set of ideas. It was an instruction to do something, or more precisely, to stop doing something that no amount of understanding could substitute for. You can grasp the concept of the circulating light completely, define it, footnote it, lecture on it, and still spend your entire life leaking attention outward, exactly as before. The map of the crossing is not the crossing. This is the wall the whole Western apparatus keeps hitting. We are extraordinary at understanding. We have therapy, frameworks, diagnoses, the most sophisticated vocabulary for the interior life that any civilization has ever produced. And the gap between understanding ourselves and actually changing has arguably never been wider. The golden flower was built to close that exact gap, not with more understanding, but with a discipline of attention that sidesteps understanding entirely. And the tragedy, the thing Jung saw and named, is that a Western mind picking up the book will almost always try to understand its way across, which is like trying to fall asleep by concentrating harder on falling asleep. The text has a word for what's left when the grasping finally exhausts itself and the light comes home. That quality that appears in a person who has stopped performing wholeness and simply, quietly, is whole. The Taoists called it Te, not virtue in the moral sense, inner power that doesn't announce itself. The stillness you can feel in a person who has stopped leaking. Jung spent the last 30 years of his life pointing at that quality. He could describe it flawlessly. He knew, to the end, that describing it was not the same as having it, and that the book on his desk in 1928 had told him so on the first read. He kept it close, anyway. When Richard Wilhelm died in 1930, only a year after they published the text together, Jung wrote of him with a grief that went beyond a lost colleague. Wilhelm had carried something across the world at real cost to himself, had spent his own light building a bridge between two minds that had never touched. That, too, is in the book. The one who does the work and then lets it go, whose greatest act leaves almost no trace of the effort it took. The flower opened, and the man who carried the seed across the ocean was gone before anyone understood what he'd planted. Where does your light go? I know what you're thinking. This is beautiful. A lost Chinese manuscript, a secret society, a psychologist undone by his own mail. And you have 41 unread messages, a thing due Thursday, and a phone that has interrupted you 4 times since this video started. Good. That's the right place to stand for this, because the golden flower is not an ancient curiosity. It is a diagnosis of your exact Tuesday. Here is the diagnosis, stripped of all the alchemy. Your attention is the most valuable thing you own. It is finite, and right now, an entire economy is engineered to capture it and pour it outward until there is nothing left. You are the person the alchemists were worried about, except they could never have imagined a world built deliberately to keep the light flowing out and never let it turn around. 3 specific things you can do with this, not over a lifetime. Today, Application 1, run the light audit. For 1 day, notice where your attention actually goes, not where you'd like it to go, where it goes. Every time it flies outward and doesn't come back. The reflexive phone check, the scroll you didn't decide to start, the argument you keep rerunning with someone who isn't in the room. Just note it. Don't fix it. Note it. By evening, you'll have something uncomfortable and useful, a map of the leaks. Most people have never once looked at where their finite light is being spent, because looking at it is itself the light turning around. The audit isn't preparation for the practice. The noticing is already the practice beginning. Application 2. Turn the light for 60 seconds. This is not a meditation app. There is no breathing script, no counting, no achievement to unlock. Once today, before something that matters, a hard conversation, real work, a decision, stop for 1 minute and let your attention rest on its own source instead of on the world. Not on your breath, not on a mantra, on the awareness itself. The thing that is aware right now. Let it turn and notice itself for 60 seconds. It will feel strange and slightly pointless. Good. Strange is the sign you've actually stepped off the outward groove for the first time all day. You are not trying to reach anything. You are letting the light circle back. That's the whole instruction. A minute is enough to feel the difference between a mind that's leaking and a mind that's gathered. Application 3. Stop cultivating one thing. The golden flower opens by non-interference. So find one area of your life you have been forcing to bloom, a relationship you keep managing, a goal you keep white-knuckling, a version of yourself you keep trying to construct. And for 1 week, stop tending it so hard. Not abandon it. Stop forcing it. Do the real work the situation actually requires, and then take your hands off. Let it grow at its own rate instead of the rate your anxiety demands. Watch what the natural movement does when you're not standing over it, pulling. This is the hardest of the 3, because the forcing feels like love, or responsibility, or diligence. Jung watched 100 patients strangle the exact thing they were trying to grow by refusing to stop gripping it. He named the disease. He also, by his own honest account, had it. So do I, so probably do you. The flower doesn't need your grip. It needs your hands off. If this is the kind of depth you've been looking for, the actual texts, the actual history, the ideas that don't resolve into a tidy checklist, subscribe. We go here every week into the forgotten figures and the books that changed people quietly. And drop a comment with this one. Where does your light go when you're not watching it? Be specific, not social media. The actual leak, the exact outward pull that eats the most of you. I read these and they genuinely shape what we make next. Go back to the desk. Zurich, 1928. The lamp, the brown paper, the string. A man opening a package he doesn't yet know is about to describe his own secret back to him. We see the moment differently now, because the thing on that desk was never really a book about Jung. It was a book about a fact, a structural fact about the human mind, that attention has a direction, that the direction can be reversed, and that something whole gathers itself when it is. Jung didn't discover that fact. Neither did the 17th century society that printed the manuscript, or the Tang mystic they credited it to. Each of them rediscovered it, and each of them, at first, thought they were alone. That's what the book actually is, not a teaching that gets transmitted from master to student down the centuries. A thing that keeps getting found, lost, buried, printed, lost again, mailed across an ocean, opened by a stranger who gasps, because it was never located in the text at all. It was located in the reader, in you. The book is just a mirror that a lot of people happen to look into, which leaves one question open, the real one, the one Jung sat with for the rest of his life and never fully answered. Not what is the golden flower. He could describe that. The question that outlived him is quieter. If the light in you has been flowing outward for your entire life, spent, scattered, poured into 10,000 things that never gave it back, what would it take not to understand the turning, but to actually let it turn? You already have everything you need to find out. You don't need the manuscript. You don't need the alchemy. You need 1 minute and the willingness to point your attention just once back at the thing that's doing the pointing. Try it once this week, not as a practice, as an experiment. Turn the light around for 60 seconds and see what's there when it comes home. You might find nothing. That's information. You might find that something in you has been waiting a very long time to be looked at. That's information too. Either way, you'll no longer be only reading about the flower. The next video follows the thread Jung himself pointed toward at the far edge of all this. To the man who stared into the collapse of European meaning, declared God dead, and found at the bottom of that darkness something that looked unmistakably like the Tao. Friedrich Nietzsche read Schopenhauer, who read the Upanishads, which trace back to Lao Tzu. The connection is real, it's strange, and almost no one tells it. The water doesn't ask where it's going. This is daily Tao wisdom. The rest is yours.